From the WGBH Newsroom in Boston, I'm Adam Reilly, and you're watching another installment of The Scrum, our ongoing conversation about politics in Boston and across Massachusetts. With me are WGBH's political analysts, Peter Kadzis and David Bernstein, who, by the way, is also a contributing editor at Boston Magazine. Guys, thank you as always for being here. Today, Peter, you are interested in talking a bit about the District 2 Boston City Council race, which I have the impression, having heard what you think about it, you believe may be the most intriguing race in the city right now?
Yeah, I think, clearly everyone's eyes are riveted on the mayor's race, but that's sort of a blended race. There's so many different factors at work there that I think it's going to be hard to draw a general conclusion about the direction of the city, except which candidate people prefer. But to me, the race, largely in South Boston and the South End, although there are other neighborhoods involved, between Linehan and Lee.
Bill Linehan.
Sorry, current City Council Bill Linehan and challenger Suzanne Lee, who came within 97 votes of winning last time. To me, this is the best barometer we have in this election between, where does the so-called new Boston stand and what's the state of old Boston.
Why is that? For people who might not be familiar with this race, what are the parameters that make you see it that way?
Well, that's because, Bill Linehan, sort of an old line South Boston political figure. Irish, worked at City Hall, very traditional. Suzanne Lee, who's hardly a wild radical, but she's a school principal, very much into reform.
Asian American is worth noting, since Lee is an ambiguous last name.
No, of course, and that's part of it. Ethnically diverse, at least by the standards I grew up with in Boston. But it's interesting. I was supposed to moderate the debate between the two of them, but I was disinvited because I'm not from South Boston, which is, Bill Linehan objected. It's a very sort of old Boston thing to do. I guess the fact that I was born in Brighton, lived in Dorchester, grew up in Dorchester, lived in Allston, East Boston, and the South End, and now Jamaica Plain, made me too much of a foreigner. But I have nothing against Bill Linehan, but it's interesting that was one of a couple of reasons given for moving that debate.
What was the other one?
The other was he had a schedule conflict, which was very easily solved, but he had the same problem 2 years ago. A number of people who wrote to me sort of apologizing about this wondered if he was afraid I'd be asking questions about marching in the St. Patrick's Day parade. Okay. That's what happened in the South End.
Of course, you could also have asked about the St. Patrick's Day breakfast and who gets to host it, because some of our viewers may remember that Bill Linehan, when he didn't want State Senator Linda Dorsina-Forey hosting the breakfast, explained it's a cultural thing. David, what do you think about this race? Do you see as much meaning attached to it as Peter does?
Well, I think it is fraught with meaning, and it's also taken on a certain additional meaning in South Boston, where they recently feel like they lost their state Senate seat, which the state senator from that district traditionally hosts the St. Patrick's Day parade.
Some of our viewers will know this, but Linda Dorsina-Forey is Haitian American, married to an Irish American, but
lives in Dorchester, and State Representative Nick Collins was running against her from South Boston. So it felt like to them like they lost that seat, and now it feels like, well, will we lose the city council seat also? That may seem a little sort of territorial and possessive, but that's a little bit of what Boston's about. Well, and by the way, I should note that it also will make a real difference on what the city council is like going forward under a new mayor. Will it have more people like Bill Linehan and some of the old school folks, or will it have some reformers like Suzanne Lee?
You wanted to jump in with the plan?
Well, I was just going to say, the Bulger trial is now fading into the recesses of our memory.
It's like a long time ago, much longer than it was.
But a lot of people commented, especially the New York Times did a whole piece about how, South Boston is changing, and, part of that change is that, Bulger has been convicted and captured and all that.
Well, and you
time is moving on.
And you think of, Ray Flynn being mayor, the former mayor from South Boston, Billy Bulger being president of the state Senate. So yeah, even though they turn out in pretty good numbers to vote, they don't dominate the political scene.
Well, no, see, I see it too. I don't see it as good or bad. I mean, I don't live there. I don't get to vote.
Yeah.
But it is part of the sort of ongoing narrative of Boston, you know, the movie, and that's what interests me.
I think you get the last word here as we get our alarm. What did you want to say?
No, I was just going to say the same thing, and basically that that what happens in South Boston in that race may also affect the mayoral race, because that's sort of a battleground. South Boston doesn't have a mayoral candidate this year, so both candidates, John Connolly and Marty Walsh, want those votes in South Boston.
Right.
And
My prediction:
Yes.
Walsh wins Southie, but not by as much as people think.
And Linehan or Lee, who wins?
I have no idea.
Okay, David?
I'm still thinking that Lee is going to pull it out, but I think that the high turnout in South Boston because of the mayoral race is a big advantage to Linehan. We'll see whether South End progressives come out to vote in Tuesday's election.
David Bernstein, Peter Kadzis, as always, thank you both for being here. Thank you, as always, for watching The Scrum. I'm Adam Reilly, and we'll see you again soon.